These aren't the stories your mother told you. No, these are the other stories.
Today's episode of The Other Stories is 6 = 1, written by Richard Reynolds and narrated by Luke Condor. The designation of the asteroid that would destroy humanity was 2004 MN4, or Apophis to some. It missed Earth by a cosmic fraction back in 2029, but in 2036 the Earth wasn't so lucky. Apophis should only have caused localized devastation, but increasingly accurate forecasting predicted it hitting Yellowstone Park, itself an active supervolcano. The result, most authorities agreed, would be extinction-level ecological devastation. If this wasn't tragic enough, Darnell Green had recently suffered disgrace and rejection. He was at rock bottom when the doorbell rang. "Kim?" he said, after taking a beat to stare at his long-lost friend and the old men she was with. "God, Kim," he sobbed. "I've missed you so much. Everything's been so hard." Kim found herself wrapped in Darnell's embrace before having a chance to respond. Through college and later as research assistants, the two had been inseparable until 10 years ago, leaving an apologetic but vague voicemail for him regarding a new position she'd taken. She'd disappeared off the face of the earth. "Where have you been?" Darnell asked, leading his guest to the sofa. "Heard of 6 = 1? She said. "The cult, with that guarded compound," he replied. "We prefer to think of it as an institute. I actually founded it, with D here." Darnell realized he'd not acknowledged the old man. "I'm sorry," he said, extending his hand. "No, pleasure," the man said, shaking Darnell's hand, who saw something unsettlingly familiar about him. "I really needed you," Darnell said to Kim, feverishly, a past fraught with hardship bubbling up in him. "Christ, where to start? I stayed with the Foundation, became a senior researcher and a contributor to their think tank, and a few years ago, when this asteroid business came to light, we were tasked to present radical solutions. And I had one, Kim, with the math to back it up. They shut me down. Even as all the alternatives fell away, they refused to acknowledge my proposal. I was treated like a fringe lunatic, which ironically made me lose it for a while there. I called them out on their shit, so they gave me the boot. The state I was in. Wow. My boyfriend eventually walked out too." "Darnell," Kim interrupted, "I know about this. In a way, I've been with you the whole time, and it's your proposal we're here about. Project Exodus." Darnell looked at Kim with suspicion. "Have you been spying on me?" "It's not like that," she said. "Trust me when I say we must help each other. It's humanity's last hope. So I'm just going to ask you flat out, will you get your notes and whatever you need to come work with us?" "I don't know what kind of funding or manpower you have at your institute," Darnell said, "but Exodus is a bare bones concept. Apophis hits in 2 days, there just won't be time. Time's the issue, isn't it?" she asked. He considered what she said for a moment, then looked at D, recognition hitting him. "Wait, it's easier if we show you, Darnell," Kim said. "Go and get your stuff." The helicopter touched down in the immense compound, half prefabricated domiciles, half industrial complexes. Darnell had barely taken his eyes from D the whole journey, the implication of his presence filling him with fear and excitement. But now Kim crowded him, leading him by the arm to the side entrance of a massive building. Being ushered down a corridor, Darnell could hear the amplified voice of someone giving a public address. Couldn't make out what was being said. The corridor terminated at a waiting room, 5 men already stationed therein. When Darnell saw who they were, he froze rigid. Kim brought over the youngest of the men. "Darnell," she announced. "This is Darnell plus 10. then introduced each man in successive age order. This is D plus 20, this is D plus 30, D plus 40, and you've met D plus 50. All the Darnell smiled knowingly at Darnell. You're all me, he managed, awestruck. With 10 years separating each of us, but yes, said D plus 10. I don't... How can... Darnell stammered. Exodus works. The time machine works. Easy, T, soothed D plus 50. You've got another person to meet. He'll answer your questions. With that, Kim led Darnell to another door and opened it slightly, so that the amplified voice could be heard more clearly. Even over the sound system it sounded strained, the voice of a very old man, wobbling with emotion. So, in closing, it said, I wish you all the best. It's been a privilege to know you. I love you all. Now, if I'm not mistaken, yes, everyone, it gives me great pleasure to meet you for the first time. Kim opened the door and led Darnell through, where he was greeted by thunderous applause. He turned to see thousands of people, an audience at an industrial theatre with complex machinery where a stage might be, and before that a wizened man in a wheelchair, hooked up to medical monitors and holding a mic. This, Kim said, is D plus 60. The old man held out his bony hand and Darnell gently shook it. I've been looking forward to this moment for a long time, D plus 60 said, quietly. The other side of the last chat. D plus 60 passed the mic to D plus 30 as D plus 10, 20 and 40 pulled across partitions to give D plus 60 privacy. Darnell required a few moments for conference, announced D plus 30 to the crowd. The Exodus is only minutes away, so might I ask you to check your belongings while you still can. Darnell took a seat next to D plus 60, the old man's breath rasped. He looked exhausted, but he eyed Darnell affectionately. I don't really remember how this went, he admitted. Where would you like to begin? Where would... Darnell started, before stopping to think. I'm sorry, this is all so confusing, the whole thing. When? How did this come to be? Who are those people? Okay, D plus 60 said. I'll lay it out in steps. The seed was planted when you first conceived of a way to crack time travel for Project Exodus. But it really started when Kim rang your doorbell. You never could have completed the task at the Foundation. It has taken your entire lifetime and an army of staff to fulfill. That's those people, the ones you've saved. They call themselves the Chosen. Silly, I know. Anyway, you'll see the Chosen are through the door in time-space with your other selves of 10 years ago. You see, you lived the rest of your life as a looping cycle over the last decade. On arrival, you call on Kim. You'll tell her about Apophis and Exodus, and she'll believe you because, well, there's 6 of you, with some incontrovertible evidence that you're from her future. She cuts all ties from her life and becomes managing director, and the name on all the documents for all 6 equals 1 business. All of the yous enact a 6-part plan to execute Exodus, and engineer this machine, starting by securing and building upon this compound. You'll mostly work apart from the other yous, with your independent teams on your own chronological stage of the project. But when you need like-minded rationale or get stuck on a task, you always have your future selves to turn to. Wait, what? Cried Darnell. D plus 60 held up a hand, a let me finish gesture. He seemed to be winding down even as he spoke. When 10 years have almost elapsed, you'll bring your component materials to this facility and join yourselves to construct the machine. Then, after Exodus, you'll gather your notes and effects and go back again to start your next stage of the project. Then again and again, until you're me. Though I'm a little old for too much activity, so you spend most of our last decade with Kim, organizing and recruiting the Chosen. I've got more questions than before you started, Darnell protested. So, the Chosen, who are they? Where are they going, and what about funding? D plus 60 nodded. For funding, we gamble. Sort of. You keep notes on the decades of lotteries, sports, and stocks, and use surrogates to win big and often. The chosen are your team, your family, scientists, technicians, machinists, accountants, cleaners, all the people you need to make a business and a community work. All good people that have, without exception, pulled their weight and earned their place. They're going to various locations around the US in 1946, after World War II, but before digital record keeping makes integration problematic. Each has fabricated paperwork, a small amount of counterfeit cash, and enough gold to set them up in a new life. He paused to catch his breath, smiling to himself. Some of them go on to shape the world quite considerably. Recruitment is simple. We advertise positions through fake companies that I pulled the applications of people I've worked with here for most of my life. Everyone, to a person, accepted the evidence of 6=1's mission. No, Darnell exclaimed. This is outrageous. The implications, the paradoxes, it doesn't make sense. It's about cyclical perspective of a D+60. It makes perfect sense. You said I help myself when I get stuck, returned Darnell. You telling me this now, putting the ideas in my head. So where do the ideas originally come from? Where does any idea come from? Asked D60. You explore your mind and it's there waiting for you. Does that make any more sense? Darnell sighed, trying to reconcile his scattered thoughts. So why go through it all? Why not just get your final notes and build it straight away? Don't be dense, D+60 reprimanded lightly. You know without the work there are no notes. Look, you do things as you do and it works. I know because I've seen it work 6 times. Humanity is facing likely extinction, but what you do here creates an eternal Mobius loop in the time stream that ensures species immortality over time. We may not move along with the universe, but humanity will never cease to be. All of this suggests what? Everything is predestined? None of our decisions are real? Asked Darnell weakly. They're as real as anything else. Look, you knew the possibility of time travel brought the possibility of a preset existence, D+60 said, his voice growing more strained. It's one thing to consider as a thought experiment, said Darnell. It's quite another to be confronted with the reality. It's just so damning and complex. D+60 used the last of his strength to hold Darnell's hand. So simplify it. Consider existence as a book. The text doesn't appear when you turn the page, and it exists on the pages yet to be read. But someone has to write the book, right? Is that God then? Questioned Darnell with a wry smile. Maybe, but probably something infinitely more complex, D+60 said, then smiled broadly as his breathing shallowed. You'll have time to consider theories. Some will bring you dark times, but when they do, ignore all that shit and remember this. Because of you, 3,648 wonderful people are spared death at world's end. That's a lifetime well spent. With this, his body grew still and the monitors screeched. Darnell looked up to see himself, said gathered. They all looked solemn, but Kim and D+50 were in tears. Even still, moments later they were shifting partitions and moving to consoles at the machines to initialize systems. D+30 addressed the chosen. For a short time, we were 7=1. Now we are 6=1 once more. The crowd bowed their heads reverently. The Exodus begins. You know the order in which to pass. We wish you all Godspeed. Kim positioned Darnell next to the lifeless D+60. This is going to be your first job, she said. They all want to meet you. The door in time-space blazed into life as an iridescent sphere, and the audience cheered. Kim brought the first of the chosen who individually paid their respects to D+60 and greeted Darnell before passing through to their destination. They went on for hours, but once finished, the Darnells joined Darnell, who saw that Kim was approaching with her bags. This is it, she said, fighting back tears. My turn. She hugged and kissed each Darnell, then backed towards the sphere. I'm going to miss you so much. Say hi to myself for me. Then she was gone. The Darnells reset the chronological destination of the machine, then gathered together their own effects. Standing side by side in front of the sphere, Darnell gave himself a nod, then stepped through time 6 times. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Other Story. 6 Equals 1 was written by Richard Reynolds, narrated by Luke Condor, produced by Jaidozi Uzochukwu, with music by Spheria and Andrew K.N. and Mayu and Tom Robson, and sound effects provided by freesound.org. The episode illustration was provided by Luke Spoon of Carry On House. Quick thanks to our community managers Jasmine Arch, Joshua Boucher and his eyeless ones, Mary Pastrano and Cody Czarzasty, and to Joshua Boucher for helping with our submission reading. And of course to Ben Errington for the ongoing explosion of content he fires out of his social media canon. Richard Reynolds is the owner and operator of Ground Zero Comics, a small comic shop in Mansfield, England, but he writes and creates his own comics whenever he finds the time. You can read his work for free via the free comics sidebar at groundzerocomics.co.uk. Luke Condor started writing on his computer in his early teens and never looked back, and now he has very sore eyes. He also runs and produces this podcast, which has amassed over 12 million downloads now, and he currently lives and works on a dining room table in the middle of Sherwood Forest. For more, come to my website, lukecondor.com, or find me on Instagram or X or wherever at @LukeOfCondor, and that's Condor spelt with a K. The Other Stories is a production of the Story Studio Hawk and the Cleaver, and is brought to you with Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives License. That means don't change it, don't sell it, but by all means share the hell out of it. Until next time.